Collective for Magical Girls Comics. I am your host slash moderator, Naan. That's Naan. Not after the Indian bread, unfortunately to say. And with me are my fellow members of the collective. Please introduce yourselves.
I'm Blue Dragon, she, her, I do Dark Horse.
Hi, I'm Feathery J Fern. I do gravitational pull.
Hi, I'm Kata Kane, and I do Altar Girl.
I'm Batichi, and I do 12 of Magic and Muses.
I'm Nan. I do Legendary Beings, Ara and Sally.
And I'm Rink, and I make Saffron Wave.
Alrighty. We hope you're in for a wild ride
And
because it's
Luma,
really gonna
your
be.
stream has been scuffed.
Huh? What happened?
Luma has the Discord instead of the stream for it. So
Is the stream down?
no, it's just a little scuffed.
Okay, well,
There we go.
I'm gonna continue. Sorry,
Go on.
technical issues, ladies and gentlemen, and NBs.
No problem.
Okay, so who are these schmucks? Good question. Well, like I said before, we are members of the Aradia Collective. Uh, it's its purpose is to promote magical girls slash boys slash MBs comics, any and all from anywhere in the world, even from beyond planet Earth, if such a thing were possible. But we're also intending to to create a database. That's the long term goal, I should say, of archiving and listing any and all magical girl webcomics that have existed in the universe. And there's a reason the last sentence in the slide has the a lovely note for Chuck Wendig. Bad choice, dude. Alrighty. And without further ado, we're gonna look at each of our panelists' sweet webcomics. Sorry about that.
Hi, I do Dark Horse, and that is a post apocalyptic fantasy set in around the late 90s, early 2000s. It's the first installment of the Crystal Lotus Chronicles at crystallotuschronicles.com. I've got a lot of inspirations varying from Sailor Moon, Rigveda, Magic Knight Ray Earth, Clover, anything by Clamp, Sayuki and Reload, Full Metal Alchemist, and more. I also am interested in music and the Beatles, mythology, theology, Prydain Chronicles, and of course Stephen King's The Stand and The Postman. I want to explore a lot of ideas such as hero worship and its harmful effects, loss surmounting hardships, unity despite differences, self acceptance, accepting others, mastering self, and overcoming adversity with and within yourself. I don't know that I'm going to change much in the genre, but I'd like to expand beyond magical girls, new world views and lens, and also doing realistic romances. On to the next person.
Dang, how am I supposed to follow that? That's so good. Hi, I do gravitational pull. It's about space magical girl depression. If you want anxiety and accurate, well, not accurate, one representation of how man PTSD does screw you up. That's where I am. I definitely wanted to have my comic focus more on what if everybody around you is the main protagonist, but you just happen to get the one magical girl power thing, but you suck. You just suck. And that's the main character. I was inspired to make my magical girl comic after what other magical girl comics and being like, well, I haven't found anything that I feel connected to me, so I'll just make my own. On to the next person.
Hi, I'm Kata, and I draw Altar Girl. I've actually been doing this webcomic since 2002, so a very long time, but I did take like a 10-year break. So I rebooted it in 2012, so that's almost another 10 years of doing it. And I really wanted to do a webcomic that had a lot of my favorite tropes from anime and manga I would call Alter Girl kind of magical girl adjacent because my main character, Ashley Alters, doesn't necessarily transform into a costume and fight, villains or anything. But she does have this magic key that she's always had. And she doesn't realize that she has this power until one day a dead guy from the 1920s, accompanied by twin angels, comes to her and kind of explains that she has one of the keys to heaven and earth. So there's a lot of the things that I love about manga, which is the school drama, the romance, just with a little bit of mystery and supernatural thrown in there. Um, and yeah, I'm just really inspired by a lot of my favorite magical girl series like Sailor Moon, the OG. I also really like Cardcaptor Sakura, Magic Knight Rayearth. Um, I'd say I don't know if it counts as magical girl, maybe magical girl adjacent. Also, Fushigi Yugi, the mysterious play, is another series I'm inspired by. And I think like there's a lot that I want to explore in this story, in regards to just how it's been such like a personal journey for me since I've been doing it for so long. Um, and the concept of like faith as mythology and love, and just how we are as people, I guess. If that's a lot of broad concepts, so sorry for that. But yeah, so you can see the links and stuff in the slide, but you can read my comic for free at altergirl.com, and you can get early access at my Patreon page. And I also have the first 3 books in print, and hopefully we'll be doing a Kickstarter for books 4 and 5 by the end of the year. So yeah, that's Alter Girl. On to the next slide.
Hi, so I'm Batishi, or Kay, and I create 12 of Magic and Muses. You can find it to read for free at xiicomic.com. It updates 6 times a week. It's mostly about a girl named Willow who gets a magical necklace and in turns accidentally infects her school with it, uncovering a conspiracy in the process. So eventually, of course, she infects 11 other girls, hence the name 12. And they all end up having motifs around the Chinese zodiac. As far as inspiration goes, I'm mostly inspired by probably Magic Knight Rayearth because it's one of my favorite ones. I'm a big sword, magic, and fantasy kind of person. But in terms of like tone, I'm definitely leaning more into like Full Metal Alchemist or Neon Genesis Evangelion. Just because I also like depressed magical girls. So that's
Woot!
yeah. So that's mostly how the tone of the story goes. And of course, it is a mystery, so it's about uncovering the magic and how it works in world building that way. And I wanted to mostly explore what happens when magical girls don't have a mascot, because, like, you're given these magical powers and you're not trained how to use them, and what happens when you get beat up all the time and you're trying to not blow yourself up in the process while also trying to figure out how these things work. And instead of having a magical book or a small creature tell you how to use your powers, you just keep tripping over your own feet. So yeah, you can find it at xiicomic.com, and the entire series is out in print already. It just kickstarted in May of this year, so I hope you check it out.
Alrighty, well, my turn now. I make Legendary Beans Aaron Salai, and the short and sweet of it is about a young girl who's chosen by an angel to become her successor. The only problem is that the girl doesn't want anything to do with the job or with the angel. Wacky hijinks ensue. It's free to read, all 3 chapters thus far at ac.jadinrhinestudios.com. Currently, it's on hiatus while I work on the fourth chapter, and it's been on hiatus for a very long time due to a lot of things in my real life happening. One of them being, what we're going for right now. But I'm hoping to come back to it soon, especially when chapter four is going to introduce the second blonde in the fourth quartet right there. Those are all technically all the main characters, but the first one in the row is the lovely Eternal Ada, aka Miyara. Um, you can actually buy all three chapters, at least the first half of chapter three, because it's a very long chapter, at the store and be up there. And the PDFs, if you prefer digital copies, are up on Itch.io. It's also able to read at Tapas, Webtoons, and Flofo. Um, let's see. Well, my inspiration is really weird because I grew up obviously loving magical girls and such, and Aran Sally, I actually came up with it back in like 2000, but at the time I didn't know there was such a thing as webcomics. I'm from Puerto Rico, and we kind of tend to get things a little later than Americans do, including possibly having a computer and internet. So I didn't really know what was going on in the online space at that time in webcomics. So for me, I was just doing it on my own for my own sake, just making comics for my own. But the inspiration came because there was a fanzine that I saw at my local comic book store, David's Comic Clan, rest in pieces. Um, and this person had a story in there about angels and demons, and at the time I was drawing an angel, the second lady in the three character black and white banner up there, and I just realized they're all angry. um the second lady in the middle, I was drawing her a lot, and she had like wings and stuff like that. I was like, I wonder if I can make a story around her and her counterpart, obviously being a devil. And so from then on, I just basically just wrote an entire story from beginning to end. And even now, there's a lot of stuff changed from that original 2001 version, but most of it more or less still remains the same. As for influences, I was really big into Kamikaze Kaito John, that's Phantom Thief John at the time. And so a lot of inspiration comes from that, as well as Nurse Angel Ririka, a little bit of Sailor Moon naturally, and Magic Knight Rayer as well, and a little bit of Cardcaptor Sakura, to be honest as well. Um, and as for exploration, I think the big one is just identity, and obviously different depictions of religion. Obviously, angels and demons are not exclusive to Christianity. I would like to be able to explore different interpretations of angels in different religions and different concepts of what is a devil as well. And that's about it. On to the next slide.
All right, hi everybody. My name is Rink. My handle is Kellerybird. You could find me pretty much anywhere under the handle Kellerybird. I write and draw Saffron Wave, a historical magical girl webcomic set 3,000 years ago on Minoan Crete. It explores the quote unquote first magical girl in I guess, in the universe that my comic takes place in. And it's going to explore older magical girls. My main characters are in their early and mid 20s, so we'll be covering topics like burnout, not being able to pay your rent, finding a job, all that kind of stuff. My inspiration is very basic. A lot of my inspiration comes from things like Sailor Moon, Cardcaptor Sakura, Shugochata, Lolly Rock, very typical media within the magical girl genre. But I also take inspiration from things like Fullmetal Alchemist, Princess Jellyfish, and things like that. The things that I want to explore with my webcomic are based off the fact that a lot of the things that I partook in growing up were very rushed. Sailor Moon in particular, it never felt like there was any real exploration of the characters within the manga, at least. So I want to be able to take the time to explore both my characters and the world that they live in, since I'm doing such, I guess, an out there theme with the history aspect. And yeah, you can find my comic at saffronwave.cfw.me. I also mirror on Tapas and Webtoons. And you can get early access comic pages by joining my Patreon at patreon.com/calorie Back to you, Nan.
Alrighty. So, just a little quick primer because we cannot assume that our audience knows what the heck are magical girls. Before that, do any of you what is a magical girl to any of you? If anybody would like to give like a little short answer or such, or what are like some of the first examples that come to you of like a classic magical girl?
I feel like all of us mentioned, not all of us, but most of us mentioned Sailor Moon. For me, like whenever you talk about like an introduction to it, I just feel like Sailor Moon was such like a launching like point for so many people. I think outside of Japan, like talking about when things get to different countries, but that for me, like Sailor Moon is always going to be like the number one answer.
Yeah, yeah.
I would
Any I'm
definitely have
sorry.
to say it specifically has to deal like at least for me a lot of them were like feminine focused. So like it was about specifically very shoujo oriented.
Mhm.
Which is a big element in these stories is unlike Super Sentai which were mixed or something like Saint Seiya which was all boys, like a big part of it is getting like the more feminine side of like a power team. Though there are plenty of like single magical girls, but that was the part that stuck out to me the most.
Mm.
I think I have the worst introduction to magical girls because I got it through Power Rangers or Super Sentai,
Sweet.
dubbed in
Sweet.
Cantonese. But I was more interested in like, oh hey, look at all these boys and girls transforming into cool power suits. Heck yes, I want a power suit. And then I got introduced to Sailor Moon afterwards. But Super Sentai and Power Rangers was my first introduction to technically magical girls and magical boys.
Well, you know about that. There's actually a magical girl webcomic called Star Rangers by Kagura, who where the story is basically like tokusatsu slash Super Sentai sort of mash with magical girls. So you know you're not far off.
I need to go read that.
Yeah, you've got some. I know you have some great stuff here in the slides too. Um, and we kind of talked about this the other day, so I'll say it for the stream too. But first magical girl for me truly would be Rainbow Bright.
Hmm.
Like as
Ooh, yeah.
like a child, Rainbow Bright.
Yeah, yeah. I
And
think I,
Shira.
yep,
And
those
what was
are
that?
Chira.
Shira.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so the reason why I asked is because the genre has a very interesting story. For example, in anime circles, you know, people always say Streets of Fire and Blade Runner were kind of like the fuel that gave a lot of Japanese creators to kind of kickstart the some classic genres in the 80s, most of them being like cyberpunk oriented or just like punk in general. Whereas in the 60s, a little show called Bewitched, with the character Samantha, who is in the purple banner here in from one of her episodes. Bewitched is about a witch who marries a human and proceeds to have wacky hijinks in their married life. And if that sounds familiar to you, that's because this show created two genres and possibly more. I don't know what was happening in 60s Japan, but that's how it was. It created the magical girl genre because the creator of Sally the Witch, technically the first anime, uh saw Bewitched and really saw how little girls were into it and it was like, okay, well, I'll just do that. I'll just use Bewitched as a template and create this show. And the other genre it created was Magical Girlfriend, which if you know a series, for example, like Oh My God, is then you're like, oh, okay, now I know what you mean. But since this is about comics, technically speaking, Sally the Witch and Himitsu no Ako-chan's Secret, are kind of always in battle with each other because Sally was the first anime, but Himitsu no Ako-chan was the first manga. So, for the purposes of this presentation, we're counting Himitsu no Ako-chan as the great witch of all. And speaking of witches, the genre actually was more focused on witch characters, on witchy witch characters, and the genre was actually called also majoko, which is little witches. And I believe it was with Creamy Mami where the shift started to change linguistically from majoko to maho chojo, which is magical girl. And basically it's Creamy Mami's fault. Um, and from then on, it's just basically magical girls, magical girls. Majoko has almost become kind of like a historical term. If you use majoko, then people are going to be like, oh, you're talking about like the 60s and 70s shows. Uh, and yeah, and of course in America we had Bewitched and Sabrina the Teenage Witch, shown here with the classic 90s version with Melissa Joan Hart, who interpreted her in the live action movie and TV show. So we already went a couple of common examples, and naturally, we already mentioned Sailor Moon, despite the fact that we're like, you know what? No, we're not going to mention Sailor Moon. She is inescapable.
Unavoidable.
Um,
Are people upset about that though? Because I love her, and I
no, no,
won't
no,
hear a bad word about her.
no, 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 no. It's more like if you've seen like articles written about like, oh, the magical girl genre is finally growing up, and because for example with Madoka Magica, a lot of people are like, oh my god, the magical girl genre already grew up, it's becoming adult or whatever, I don't know. And anybody who's a magical girl fan or even just an anime fan would be like, it already got dark a couple of times before Madoka Magica. Nurse Angel Ririka SOS, a example I mentioned, was already pretty dark. And so lately, in the past year, there's been articles about like, how the first magical girl is Sailor Moon, or the only magical girl that everybody knows is Sailor Moon and Madoka, etc., etc. And so some of us, me, I'm just like tired, but some of us actually get angry because it's like there's more to the genre than Sailor Moon and Madoka Magica. And this next slide, obviously we've already mentioned Ray Earth, which needs more love and has enough love to be mentioned, because it's actually pretty cross genre. It's mecha, it's isekai, or what is now known as isekai, because at the time that wasn't a genre term in the United States, at least. Uh, it's chojo, it's maho chojo, it's magical girls. It has everything you could want if you love your swords and your girls, like Patichi and Blue Dragon too.
Yeah.
But in the United States, there very rarely do you see a show like Magic Knight Ray. The closest that could come to it is Princess Guinevere and the Jewel Riders, or Starla as it's known in some areas, where it's three girls. They're not isekai. They're kind of like princesses of their own respective kingdoms. But in order to defeat evil, they have to transform into like these sort of like proto knights type of deal, using gems based on the sun, moon, and heart, and basically transform into armor and ride sweet horses along that ride sweet horses that are also armored. And basically, yeah, just kind of like be kind of like Shira almost, I suppose, but not exactly. And another example relevant to Magic Knight and the American counterpart is with the Amethyst Princess of Gemworld comic, which is one of the few comics that a mainstream American comic has put out that is so magical girl, and yet its creators, Dan Mishkin, and Ernie Colon, and I'm forgetting the other creator. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. But those three are not, as far as we know, anime fans. They don't know anything about the magical girl, but they were created as a uh fantasy title, and yet there's so much of the magical girl in it. There's a girl that transforms into like sort of like this young adult. Amy Winston transforms into Amethyst. She is actually the long lost princess of another world and is isekai'd to that other world to battle Dark Bull. And it has a lot of like naming after gems, color coding. She even has a mascot, which is a horse that can fly. So much of the magical girl tropes that exist in it and yet it's obviously not considered magical girl within like comic circles because that genre isn't as strong over here as it is in Japan. But yeah, does anybody have any comments about this one? Because we still have some more examples.
I just wanted to say about Magic Knight Ray Earth is it was so great to see. Yeah, it did have like a lot of darker elements. It was the introduction of Mokono or Makona. I'm sorry, Makona,
Mokuna.
who goes through a lot of different clamp works, and just the idea of like Magic Girls meets giant robots meets video games. It's like it was great because I've always liked medieval and just fantasy elements, and a lot of times they weren't really geared towards girls, so I had to take on whatever was thrown at me, and that's why I clung to this so quickly whenever I found it.
Yeah, same for me. I am a big Sailor Moon fan, but I do prefer things a little more masculine. So like just being able to watch these three girls like with actual physical swords and do combat and have everything from magic to weapons to pets to mechas and armor was like a whole other thing for me. It wasn't just like running like I like Sailor Moon has like figure skating outfits and that kind of thing, and Cardcaptor Sakura had those really nice outfits that her friend made for her. And they were always like super puffy and girly, and that was really cute. But like to actually see like a group of girls wearing like armor, heavy, and of course it's 80s, so they have wicked shoulders.
Yeah,
Um, massive pauldrons.
love
Aldrin game is
armor.
very strong.
Yeah, so I always appreciated having something that was like a little more into what I was interested, which was like combat and that kind of stuff.
Sweet. Well, our next example is of the thief variety slash magician, and I'll let Kara talk about Saint Tail because it's actually very relevant to her own webcomic.
Yeah, I would love to talk about Saint Tail. Um, in my comic, Altar Girl, the name of the very prestigious private school that they go to is Saint Tail Academy. And that is not a coincidence. I did that intentionally because as I was developing Altar Girl, I was in high school and watching all the anime I could get my hands on. And when I found Saint Tail, I was like, wow, there's a lot that I have in common with this anime that I've never seen before. Um, so Saint Tail is about Meme Hanaoka. That's her name, right? And
Mhm.
she is the titular Saint Tail. She kind of has like she works with in the photo on the slide. There's like a nun looking character there named Sarah. I also have a Sarah in my comic who is an angel, um, spelled almost the same way. But basically, Sarah can kind of like hear people's thoughts when they like pray to God, and she and Meme like work together, and Meme kind of like steals stuff uh back that has kind of been taken wrongfully. She's kind of like a Robin Hood type character, and she transforms into Saint Tail, and she uses like magic tricks and stuff. That's why she has the little top hat. Um, and Asuka Jr. is a guy who wears suspenders, and one of the love interests in Altar Girl, Seth Charming, who is from the 1920s, also wears suspenders. So it's just like there's too much going on. Like I'm on the same wavelength as this creator. And she actually has another comic that is a lot like another story that I kind of had in the back of my head. So I just feel like I have like this person's energy. I can't remember the creator's name off the top of my head right now, but yeah, so Saint Tail is yeah, if we're talking about the thief genre, that yeah, she kind of yeah, steals stuff and leaves notes for Asuka Jr. to so he's like a detective. His dad, I think, is like the head of the police force or something, and he's like a detective in training. But they're all like babies. They're all like 13 years old or something. They're all middle school students, so yeah.
The creator's name is Megumi Tachikawa, if I
Thank you.
remember correctly. If it's been a while since I've read the manga, but I think
You're
that's her
right.
name.
You're right. You are right. And it's because I was thinking of Meme Hanaoka. I was like, that's all I can think of is the name of the main character, and
Yeah.
they sound very similar.
Yeah,
But
right.
yeah, so that is why as I was developing Alter Girl and watching this anime, that I was like, I've got to call their school Saint Tail Academy. And since it's a Catholic school, it's funny
Yeah.
to me that it's like the patron saint of anime to me.
Yeah,
So
we have to try and get some money and get you and Megumi Tachikawa together in a room. Maybe someday
oh
that'll
my
happen, right?
goodness. Oh my goodness. She'll be like, you stole my stories. And I'll be like, no, I didn't. We
I
just
swear I
both thought
did.
the same thing. I was just
Just
a
use this
teenager.
presentation as an excuse. Like, no, here's some other examples of why I didn't steal. It was just
Yeah.
on the same wavelength.
Yeah. So,
Well, yeah.
yes, that's all I'll say. I was just going to say, I really like the fact that it kind of has religion as magic, like mythology. And that's something that
Mhm. Mhm.
I definitely like exploring in Alter Girl too. So,
Yeah, I really like that idea too as well. And the magician part is actually why I have the American counterpart has Tenko and the Guardians of the Magic. It's a short-lived series. It's almost better known for its dolls. I had like all three of the dolls. That's how I first knew about this show back in the 90s because it's a show based on an actual magician called Princess Tenko. That's her in the photo right there, and it's actually a pretty also unique show that has sadly gone into full obscurity because not only is she a magical girl slash magician who transforms into different outfits. I believe the yellow one is her main one, but she has a team and they're all magical boys, and those are the four boys. Well, I should say men because she's an adult, so she's a woman and they're all men, and pretty diverse as well, obviously. So it's kind of like very basic, like, oh, we have to, I believe it has to seal the evil from this world, stuff like that. But she uses magic in the show, and at the end of the show there would be like live action segments where the real Princess Tenko would perform magic. So not exactly thief, but certainly within the sort of like the magical aspect of both Saint Tail and Tenko. I feel like this could be a good counterpart. And at least last but not least, between the Japanese and the American counterparts, not Creamy Mommy and not Hannah Montana, otherwise known as Fancy Lala and Gem and the Holograms. And both these shows are pretty much, normal girl acquires an object, either through a electronic lady or two mascots, and transforms into a singing sensation. Curiously enough, because the magical girl genre is usually geared towards young girls in Japan, that's why kind of like the wish fulfillment of like oh, I can transform into a pretty young woman. But with Gem and with most of the magical girl examples in America, it's almost always adult women transforming into the magical girl for reasons. In this case, Jerica Benton's uh, identity is managing an orphanage, and she sings as Gem in order to get money to keep the orphanage alive. Anybody got any comments on this? Questions?
just that it's
No
truly
strong
outrageous.
opinions one way or another.
That's fine by me. We can go on to the next slide. Of course, we can't forget the token rep. Um, a lot of people wouldn't classify Saint Seiya as magical boy, and that's fine. It was published in a shonen manga, and as we all know, anything shonen cannot be anything else. But it's very clearly like a magical. You could probably say maybe a cousin or something, a magical boy show, because they transform into like this sweet looking outfits. They use the constellations, Western and Asian constellations. I should say Eastern. I'm sorry, Eastern constellations. In the show, they transform. Friendship is the key. All right. Masami Kurumada set out to do like a story where men can, embrace each other, cry. They can, uh, they can have emotions. Because the for him the idea of masculinity is being protective of people and having some morals. Ironically enough, the circle kind of went around because a couple of years ago he set out to do what's called a Saint Seiya Saint Seiya show, which is basically the same concept of Saint Seiya but with girls. And what's great about this that he set out to do this because he was like, hey, it'd probably be fun to do like girls because despite the fact that there are female characters, many of them very strong in Saint Seiya, and the trainers of all the saints in the show are women. They have masks on because they cannot show their appearance, but they're all women. They're strong women. But some of the critiques that people have is like, oh, not enough woman, and Kurumada probably likely took that to heart. It's like, probably could be fun to do like Saint Seiya for girls, and he set out purposely to have a female artist draw. And so basically, don't worry, it doesn't destroy canon. It's basically kind of like developing alongside the original canon. Then it's basically kind of like a sequel slash addendum, kind of like a fun story. The anime is kind of but the manga is pretty good. And of course, Steven Universe, for the American counterpart, clearly a magical boy anime by all accounts. I mean, it has Utena references and Sailor Moon references. Um, and one I think Rebecca Sugar said something once about magical girls, but it does not come to mind. Um, should we go to the next slide, or somebody have
Yeah, we
strong
should move
opinions?
along. We're running out of time.
Oh no. Well, we'll just the best thing about it is that the rest of the slides are pretty short. But this one,
Yeah. Should I explain to you what the heck is this atrocity on the side first?
well, let's just say this is the
Oh,
international side, and we cannot focus too much on this because a lot of it is obviously information in our language, and we have at best a little bit of it.
yep.
And also,
I
I
just
just want to say, oh, sorry,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna quickly explain what the heck Balala the Fairies is
Yeah,
for
go ahead.
anybody who is not a Chinese person. It's pretty much Pretty Cure, Chinese version of Pretty Cure, but they had a live action first season, and each season afterwards is different magical girls in a different art style. And it didn't sell very well because they were like, oh, why is it like Japanese but it's Chinese? And then the Chinese people are like, we really don't care. We just watch it anyway. Kids
Yeah.
will absorb anything at this point,
Well,
and that's why this was created. Anyway,
yeah. Shout out to Air from who's also from Aradia. He does Pony Magic Fairy Girls. He constantly mentions Rainbow Magic as an example of a British magical girl uh, uh, concept. And so I just put it in there just to have like British representation, I guess. Lolly Rock is French, and Witch, who is in the purple banner, is Italian. Along the way, we'll hope to have like actual more examples of international things. And now to the good part. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen and NBs? The first Magical Girl webcomic, there's two competitors, and they're both magical boys. Dun dun dun. Oh no. Yeah, the left is Shonen Chikara, and the right is Magical Boys. That's it. That's the actual title, Magical Boys. Both were created in 2000. At least, according to the website, the first year indication is 2000. And yeah, these are very clearly of the time. Let's just say. Obviously, it was very hard to get information on both beyond their websites, and the websites can only be accessed through the web archive. So I managed to get as much as I can. For Shonen Chikara, it was very interesting because it's very of the time. And by of the time, I mean that a lot of the humor is very kind of like how do I say it? Um, it was just quote unquote funny to put boys in skirts kind of humor. Despite that, I think you can definitely see that if you were the kind of person into like say Visual K or J Rock at the era, you probably recognize like the vibe that these people were going for. They were very proud of being the first magical boy. Excuse me. First magical boy manga, as they say on their website, an online orderable manga about boy power. That's actually pretty interesting that they actually had like PDFs that you could download of of each complete chapter if you wanted, and they actually also sold printed comics, and you could just basically write to them, be like, okay, sure, and they actually uh printed it themselves. They would print out, they would kind of like organize it, put on the cover, stuff like that. Like they didn't send it out to print to a company. Like they did everything themselves. It was actually pretty inspirational reading through how they went through it. But the curious thing about it is that apparently they might have gone into some controversy because one of the points they emphasize is like why does anybody have a problem with them making a magical boy? Because apparently, they're like, well, girl power, it's clearly not real girl power. And like, why does Sailor Moon and what does that have to say about girl power? Why does
Hey,
that only have to
Nan,
apply to women? Yeah,
I think we're like 5 minutes, like 3 minutes out. So, just FYI.
that's fine.
Yep,
Huh,
we
I
also
thought
have a
I
question from the chat that I've been meaning to address.
Oh yeah,
From
go ahead. I'll
Feather
just
Notes,
I thought
another
we had like
fellow
20
Feather.
minutes left, but
Has
okay.
these magical girl stories that inspire your own stories inspire the styles that y'all have too? So, you want to maybe take it from the top in terms of like what our Discord's looking like. So,
Yeah, I guess that means Blue. Go first. Go start answering while I go through the slides, then just showing them off because I thought we had 20 minutes.
Yeah, definitely it has inspired some of my styles. But I've also in recent years been incorporating inspiration from various inkers. Alfonso Dunn has been very influential with how he inks. But style wise, definitely, yeah, the mangas and comics and animes would influence me.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that 12 is probably mostly influenced by Lu- Alphonse Lucha as well, and a lot of Clamp stuff as well. Mostly in terms of like inking and that kind of thing.
I definitely feel like I really am inspired by Rumiko Takahashi, who I neglected to mention in the beginning because I was
Yeah.
focusing more on shojo, and I wish I'd just gone with my gut. But my stories are definitely inspired by the way that she can do humor and comedy and romance and action. So I definitely feel like I got a lot of inspiration from Rumiko Takahashi from Ranma One Half specifically.
I think my inspiration definitely comes from Sailor Moon. That was a big factor for me when I first started drawing. But in recent years, my inspiration from my art style comes from manga from the 70s, like Glass Mask and The Rose of Versailles. So that's where my main influence comes from these days.
anybody else?
I
Um,
think you're the last one, Feather,
oh,
other than
okay, I'm
Don.
the last one. My style for everything actually comes from shonen and no magical girl stuff. So my style was influenced by like I believe uh weird supernatural uh early 2000s manga like Nightmare Inspector, like Muyo and Roji, like Magatan. I can never pronounce it's like something neuro, uh, but I'm specifically my art style went more shonen, but for magical girls. So I got the weird one, but that's fine.
In my case, a huge influence obviously is Clamp. Uh, Atsuko Ishida, who is the character designer for Magic Knight Ray Earth, was also huge. Who else? I'm actually blanking out right now. Um, Probably Arina Tanemura as well, to be honest, since Kamikaze Kaito-jan had a big influence on me. Um, I know it's not gonna make any sense, but W. Lindsay, who is actually one of the artists for Archie Comics, or used to be, sorry, before they did a complete reboot of the entire company. The way he draws is really fluid, and he incorporates a lot of different art movements into his pinups and stuff. So I really like that art as well, and I try to emulate that as well. I don't know who else, to be honest. I wasn't. You can tell I wasn't prepared for this question because I'm just like, yeah, those three, just just those alone. But yeah, I'm just going through the slides of like the first
I was
comics,
gonna
and
say if we're running low on time, do we want to kind of do like a outro? Everybody can say who they are again and plug your stuff.
Do
yeah,
we
let
have
me
time
just.
for one more question?
Anybody have any more question? I'll just go
Yep.
through the slides here then.
Yep, because we there is a lot of magical girl comics from like the beginning of like time and space continuum, and uh definitely we're going through a bunch of them, so please do check all of them out, and including the rest of our collective. We do have 15 plus members of like magical girl comics and magical boy comics and magical in between comics,
Yeah.
non-binary comics. Yeah.
I
Do
also
we
wanted
have one?
to plug Sparkleside Chats, which is a
Mm.
podcast for specifically the magical girl genre, magical boys, magical NBs. IU worked super hard by herself editing of her episodes, and she's a really great host. So if anyone wants to hear more on the history of magical girls and even listen to, because I think most of us have had an interview with her.
Yeah, I was gonna
Us,
say I think most members have been on the show too, so
yeah,
you can
So
listen to
yeah.
each of our episodes.
yeah. So please go check out Sparkleside Chats. It's super cute, and IU is the best.
Yeah, it's really well done, and if you enjoyed going through like a thorough history, kind of like we did in this presentation, IU definitely knows her stuff. I learned a lot on my show.
And also, if we're doing an outro, since I don't see any more questions, do you guys also want to say anything else about your webcomics kind of thing? So from the top.
Uh, Go ahead.
Sorry. I was gonna say, while Magic and Muses is actually ending next year, the day before my birthday in September, so that webcomic will be over, and I will be switching series in 2023 to its sequel series. So be sure to check it out before it's done.
Yeah, I'm actually getting ready to print Act 3 of Dark Horse at www.crystallotuschronicles.com. And yeah, I also offer PDFs. It's pretty fun, and you can go visit if you like. I'm done.
Wow.
Sorry,
Nice.
I get nervous.
It's okay. Everybody above me is so accomplished, but um, working on just trucking along on gravitational pull. I'm actually also working on another magical girl comic, but everybody's much older in that story, so check it out when it happens. Maybe next year. Who knows? On to you.
Um, I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the panel that I'm hoping to kickstart books 4 and 5 together. I've not done a Kickstarter yet where I combine books, so please check it out whenever I get around to it. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's cat_Kane. And please support Alter Girl on Patreon so I can continue to draw it. Thank you guys.
I don't really have much else to say about mine since I think my comic is the newest out of everyone. So I just started posting pages for it last September. So please read my comic. It's going to be really good, I promise.
I think I forgot to
Yay!
say. I think I forgot to say when I posted mine, but mine was posted in 2006. So get to it, I guess.
Oh, yep. Yeah, it's been a great panel. Remember to stay hydrated, everybody.
Yeah.
All the sources
Don't
we
forget
use
to
in this
stretch.
presentation will go on Twitter and our site at a later time because after this, I think we're all just gonna forget anything existed and relax.
Yep. Yep. Do
Well,
remember
thank
to
you
check
guys.
out everybody else in the collective. We are only
Yes,
six
please.
people of the collective.
There's 21 of us.
Oh,
Oh, that was
also,
the
Yeah.
number. I
if
knew it was like more than 20, but I wasn't very certain. So I said more than
Nah,
50.
it's okay.
and
We
if you have
finally
your
also have
own
a comic
magical
strip
girl,
as well.
sorry, I was just gonna say if you have your own magical girl NB boy comic, to
Please
also
submit.
maybe submit it.
please submit. Please submit. Submit to us in every context of the word.
Yeah. We also will be as a collective planning on doing some more things with the collective. So it's great to have you guys come and like join us in the fun kind of thing.
Well, thanks for having us on, everybody.
Thanks for having us on. If there's
Thank
any more,
you.
if there's not any more questions, yeah, then we're off.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thanks. Bye.